Yeah, I'm Ken Shapero here at Omnicomp Connecting Point, a computer store in Charlottesville, Virginia. And we just finished running a commercial with Arthur the Lion and Dr. Antle from the Buckingham Zoological Park. And it's been a fantastic experience working with them, the way they treat the animals so naturally and with so much compassion. To see these animals right here in our computer store has been kind of a pleasant and fun shock for us, and it's been a great experience. They've been here all day, tigers, lions, and elephants, and it's just been a lot of fun for everybody. Can't believe that I'm standing here next to an African lion, and he hasn't bitten my arm off.
It's a jungle out there in the world of computer shopping and buying. At every turn, you meet with obstacles and complicated decisions. Omnicom Connecting Point has tamed the computer jungle, bringing you a full line of Apple computers. Omnicom Connecting Point is an authorized Apple dealer. Let Omnicom tame your computer jungle with Apple computers.
All right. Love it. So that was quite the commercial. If you're right now listening to this, you have an opportunity to actually watch this first part of this segment today by just going onto YouTube and watching it, because it is a phenomenal commercial. So, hey everyone, welcome in. And you're listening to the Winnie podcast with the Rancher Way show. And I'm really excited to be here with my friend and fellow IBC brother and advisor, Kenneth Shapero. And Ken, just based on this commercial here, you have just got a wild background because you were a part of Apple in the early innovation team back in the late 1970s, and you built your own chain of Apple computer stores on the East Coast and East Coast in the States, and even sat on boards with like big names, like 3M and Psycho. How do you say that? Psycho?
Yeah.
Psycho is probably better than Psycho, but
Yeah.
Before, yeah. So, and you sat on these boards before your company was actually acquired by Apple in 1991. And after, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And after a short break, you went on to work in mergers and acquisitions at the GE Capital and eventually launched your own wealth management firm in South Florida. And now through your company, Real Change Financial, you bring the same type of innovative mindset to sharing the infinite banking concept with families, business owners, and folks just like you and me who want to take back control of their cash flow and really build something that actually lasts. Plus your business name, Real Change Financial. So welcome, Ken. I'm really glad that we're here together today.
Thank you, Winnie. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
You're one of my inspirations as well. So to spend time with you is a great honor. Thank you so much.
Well, the feeling is mutual. So in learning even more about you, it's funny. This is what I really truly enjoy about friendships is that we always have an opportunity to get to know each other even more over time. And until I watched this commercial, I had no idea you had, I always knew you were so passionate about sharing IBC, but then when I see what your passion, whenever you have passionate about something, you really take it to a different degree. I mean, if you, again, go to our YouTube channel to watch this commercial, because he literally in his store has all of these wild animals in his store. And it is just like mind boggling. You wouldn't be able to do that today, but
No, probably not.
Not in today's
Yeah, it was a great experience. They were actually in the store filming this commercial for maybe 6-7 hours. And there was not only were there 400 or 500 people looking through the window in the parking lot, but there actually vendors showed up, on truck vendors selling food. I mean, it became a circus atmosphere, and it was just so much fun to do. It was so much fun. And
and I can see how much fun it was. And I love the commercial from front to back. And it really does go to show, back in the 70s, what year, was that in the 90s when you filmed that?
No, that was in around 83, 84, I forget. So still pretty early on. And I like to say that when I discovered Apple, or they discovered me, whatever, and I kind of joined the parade, it was like a huge light bulb moment because we wanted to change the world for the better. We wanted to democratize information from the evil empire known as IBM and all that good stuff. And now is fully entrenched with infinite banking. It's a second light bulb moment for me. And I couldn't be more happy doing what I'm doing, because when you do something you love and it has a positive effect on the people you work with, what could be better?
It's such a blessing to be able to live a life where your calling, your vocation that you choose to do happens to also fill your cup. Because a question that I had for you, Ken, because you've been sharing the infinite banking concept at least for 2 decades or more.
Yeah.
Right?
I met Nelson in year 2000.
Yeah.
So
26 years.
Time flies. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
26 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about family by family, business owner by business owner, individual by individual, that we have an opportunity to sit down and clarify what the infinite banking concept is and what it could potentially do for them. I think that everyone has like a different pace at which they take in IBC in general. And as you and I both know, I think that getting people on board is probably the easy part, but getting them to actually successfully implement it and live it is really a different story. And before we go there, one of my first initial questions to you is, because you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but you went from like Apple to Wall Street to infinite banking.
Yeah.
You know, can you identify and speak to what got you to IBC in the first place?
Well, as I was involved as a financial advisor, I had security licenses to sell mutual funds, stocks, equities, bonds, and so forth, commodities. And I don't know, I wasn't very happy doing it because what goes up goes down. And when it goes down, I became the brunt of people's anger and frustration. And I just didn't enjoy that. It just wasn't a good life to live. And there were so many other complications to it. And I did begin to realize that there was a certain amount of manipulation that Wall Street does on the population. And I didn't want to be part of it. And yet I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. I went to, in year 2000, as I alluded to earlier, to like a breakfast meeting put on by one of the big mutual fund companies. Same old, but I went to it anyway because I need to stay abreast of the industry. And they had this speaker there named Nelson Nash, never heard of his name before. And he started speaking about how you're being hoodwinked, you're being taken advantage of by Wall Street and the government, and you need to free yourself from it. And there's this little known concept called infinite banking, which is a certain way of specifically, as you know, putting together a whole life policy to give one's financial sovereignty. And he's saying this stuff totally foreign to me. I was like sweating. And when he was done, I wanted to go up and invite him for lunch, but there were 300 or 400 people there in the audience in this ballroom in a hotel. And I figured, well, fat chance of that. I was the only one who came up to him. And I took him to lunch, and then I started stalking him for years. And it took me a while to really get it going. You know, because we're going against the grain, Winnie. We're all sort of been programmed as Western people, so that I'm including Canada, America, even Europe. Buy term, invest the rest. And that is a big programming, and it's really been hit hard by Wall Street for the last 50 years in a big way. And to go against that, you're constantly doubting yourself. Well, no one else is doing this. Why am I doing this? And of course, luckily, I began to meet other fellows and ladies around the continent that were taking on this, but having the same issues as me. And I'll tell you what did it. I know it sounds crazy. It did take time. But by 2007, I gave up all my security license, only doing permanent life insurance. But even then, I didn't have fully grasped everything. I was brought up in a family where, in a very rare way, where my father was very invested in Austrian economics. And I couldn't connect the dots at that time. I knew there's some connection because in Austrian economics pushes savings over spending. Spending is very socialistic Keynesian sort of thing, but saving is what grows an economy. So the concept of saving money in a permanent whole life policy attracted to me, but I didn't fully get the dots until year 2010 when I read this book. I was stuck in an airport for 8 hours because of a snowstorm. I had just bought the book, had the book sent to me, and this is what turned everything around and connected the dots. And it's from year to 2010, all I do is infinite banking.
So just for our pure listeners today, those of you not being able to watch the book he just held up, it was How Privatized Banking Really Works, written by Carlos Lara, Bob Murphy, and I believe Nelson is a part of that book too. And so that specific book helped you to connect the dots with how Austrian economic was really a big part of like how IBC is like the implementation or the expression of...
It's a practical extension, implementation of of Austrian economics, and that was full circle for me. Full circle. And my dad, unfortunately, has since deceased, but he would have been so proud to know that this was happening, this movement had taken place. So it really catapulted me into the courage mode. Just to speak frankly, in person.
So us having a bit of a curse of knowledge up until this point, really, like it's, I think the greatest, there's so much to like grasp for people who don't live and don't know anything about the infinite banking lifestyle. There's already so much to wrap their minds around in the way of how it's different to financially operate using this mindset. But then add in Austrian economics when, I think that every day, it's kind of like, as an analogy, growing up, I had no idea that the North American space, we ran on the Gregorian calendar. It didn't really until you get a little bit older, and you get a little bit more worldly. There's the lunar calendar, there's the Mayan calendar. And we all grew up in the North American space. Depending on how old you are, you don't really think about how you spend and save money in terms of like philosophies. We're under the Keynesian philosophy. That's how our entire our political space sort of runs on like the Keynesian way of being versus the Austrian economics. Now, I don't think, not even for myself, I didn't grasp that forever. So maybe if you could just maybe simplify what the Austrian economics is to the layperson.
Yes. When you first hear about it, you just go like, well, what the heck? It's common sense. But when you realize that the Keynesian mindset, which in that mindset is simply this, I meaning the government, I meaning central planners, I know what's better for you than you know what's better for yourself. And of course, we all know, those of us who look closely at that, we know that that's the underpinning of socialism and communism. We know better for you than you know for yourself. And so Austrian economics was a response to that, which said, no, economics is human action, and human action is the desire for every human being to try to better their life through their own individual means. Now, saying that, of course, we all know that we're not living on an island, by ourselves. That does require coordinating with other human beings to be able to create a better standard of living. But it's up to you. It's up to you and me. It's up to the individual. And when I first heard that, growing up, I'm like to my dad, well, what's the big deal? That just, anybody knows that, right? But when you understand in the historical context, when not the founder, but the real father of Austrian economics was Ludwig von Mises, when he came to America in the late 30s to escape the Nazis, 100% of all departments of economics, 100% of the professors there in all of these were Keynesians, and they didn't want anything to do with what he had to say. And we're still suffering from that. Thank goodness inroads are being made. There are more and more Austrian economists that are in major universities and colleges throughout North America and Western Europe and so forth. But it's still a minority. And so we have a lot of work to do. And that's why I don't expect the whole world to adopt infinite banking. But when people get it, they can't wait to get going on it because they know that it means sovereignty, personal sovereignty with your finances. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. We can get into that as you wish.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much, Ken. Thank you. I learned something from everything you just said. So this is interesting because as you were speaking to the difference between Keynesian versus Austrian economics, I mean, I guess for me, if I relate it down to the you and me level,
Mm-hmm.
I think what most people care about is, okay, unless you want to, like you said, we can't very well expect everyone to be on board with the infinite banking concept because we're humans, right? I mean, if we were all on the same page, there would be no wars, you
Right.
know?
We'd
And
all be
so
eating pizza and we wouldn't have Chinese food or any other good cuisines.
exactly. We
Yeah.
are, as a human race, we are meant to be varied and have a lot of variety. And
Yeah.
our challenge is to accept and respect our differences anyway. But I don't think we went quite there yet. Although, but coming back to the me and you level, I think what Austrian economics sort of looks like, if you resonate with it, you may be the type of person to say, okay, I would like to make the bank plan B. I would like not to have to rely on the government for CPP or OAS, like all those pension plans. Like I don't want to have to hope that the government's going to have enough money to give me enough income to allow me to live when I get older. Right? I would like
change the rules and make it more restrictive to get the money out.
Right.
You know.
But there are genuinely some individuals who feel like the government should be looking out for them, right? But I think the people that will really best resonate with the infinite banking concept are those that feel a greater sense of peace of mind to create that security for themselves rather than to have to rely on someone else.
Yes,
right? I think that's the bottom line of it.
And we do have a goal, and that is in Austrian economics is historically speaking, if we can get 10% of the population on board, that can change the world. Because, for example, what do you think the percentage of members of the Communist Party during the heyday of the Soviet Union was? Never more than 6%. And yet they controlled the whole economy, the whole population, because that was the movement that was the loudest and got the attention. And as soon as that didn't get attention anymore, it just disappeared, evaporated. Growing up during the Cold War, I just assumed we would have World War III would end it. And it just evaporated because they didn't have the 6% anymore. So we're going to keep plugging away, tell the story, keep the excitement up, and show people. And one of the things I do with my clients and friends, because I want to have friends, is I show them what I do. I practice what I preach. And I think that goes a long way because I once asked years ago, I asked a guy who was knee deep in the Goldman Sachs world as a money manager, investments, all that stuff. I said, what's the main place you put your money? He said, whole life insurance. Can you imagine that? Who wants to live a life of you do one thing, but tell your clients another thing? I couldn't live that way.
That definitely sounds out of alignment.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. I mean, whatever. We'll leave that as it may. But that was an astounding statement that person said. And I think about those things because I don't want to live a lie. I don't want to live a lie. And I even tell people, if you know something that would increase sovereignty better than infinite banking, please tell me. I would listen to it. No one's been able to do it just yet. And they, of course, they like to say, oh, it's not a very good investment. And I said, because it's not an investment. It's an alternative to a bank. Because as we know, Nelson said, there's 3 ways you use your money. You borrow from other people and pay them interest. You don't do anything with your money, which means it's not doing anything for you, or become the bank. And so we're just getting you in the right space.
Well, you said there's 3 things to do with money. So maybe go through those 3 things.
Okay. First, we do appreciate debt because it has helped increase our standard of living. In other words, we don't have to just save up money to build a house. We can just save up enough for a down payment and pay over time if we have debts. But the way banks work with debt is not in our best interest. as you know, when you have a mortgage on a house after 5 or 6 years, how much did I pay down? I bet I paid down a lot because I'm paying $2,500 a month on this mortgage. And you look at it, it only went down $3,000. The rest
Yeah.
was all interest. Okay. So that's not really in your best interest. Then you could say, I'm going to be debt free. So all your assets are just sitting, not doing anything, under a couch, under your mattress. And then the money's not working for you. And inflation, unfortunately, is cutting away. I got to digress for a minute, Winnie. I just read this. From 1810 to 1910 in the United States of America, do you know what the cumulative amount of inflation from 1810 to 1910? And keep in mind, the Federal Reserve, the central bank, was formed in 1913. Okay?
Right. So,
You know what it was?
Nope.
0.
No inflation.
Yes. You
Right.
know what it's been since then up to now? It's been 95%. In other words, if you had $100, then you would have to have $9,500 to achieve the same needs, to get the same needs that you might have, a loaf of bread or a car or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that is really what we're looking at. We're not looking at an investment. Not that, the dividend is not bad. I mean, it is compound interest. It is tax-free, at least in the States. And there's no reporting to the United States government. And that's a pretty good sounding thing. People who you really, you want to try to work with people already questioning. And I want to make it really clear. Questioning doesn't mean you're automatically against the establishment, because that's an issue that goes on in society all the time. Either you're for or you're against. I mean, right now, do you love America? Do you hate America? This has nothing to do with that.
And to speak to this a little bit more, what comes up for me is like, well, when we do start looking around, and of course, I think there is so much more awareness, especially here in Canada. There's a lot of Canadians who are looking into how corrupt or crooked, or maybe not, just that it's not a win-win relationship. Okay, let's just put it this way. It's not a win-win relationship with banks, and that's just the way that it is. And they have a very successful business model. But we all know that if it's not a win-win relationship, what is the solution, right? Let's not, and this is what I love about what Nelson has really shared. It's like, okay, here's the problem. Here is the solution. Let's get out of let's work past, now you understand, if you see this as the problem and you agree that here is a way to solve that problem, starting with us first, because that's who we have actual control over, is ourselves first.
Right.
And it is one of the most peaceful ways to protest without losing hope, because you cannot change the trajectory of what the banks want to do. And you cannot change what the governments want to do either, but we can change ourselves, and we can change the way that we respond to it. And we do actually now have a path forward on how to conduct ourselves financially, so that when we get to when we edge closer to our retirement stage, or when you're thinking closer about, okay, am I going to have enough money to live or what? How long do I have to keep working for? And most people, I think, externally are hoping that, okay, because we, you and I, Ken, we are like a lighthouse for people, right? There's just a lot of people who don't want to sit there and specialize in this kind of thinking all day long. Right.
And so they don't really have to. That we can do it with them.
Yes.
I mean, I
exactly.
do like to empower people, but to the extent that they want to be empowered, and they don't really have to be that much, as long as they're aligning themselves with someone who has taken it on, like yourself, and then they're in good shape.
Well, I also believe too that when people do take the time to really truly implement the infinite banking mindset and use it as a way to conduct themselves, so to speak, as a financial lifestyle, the more that they practice this, and it takes kind of years to develop faith that this is the right path. And it's just the nature of things, right?
And years to develop competency too.
Right. To believe that, okay, with because what's the biggest thing? What's the on your website, it actually says the very first principle that you must understand about the infinite banking concept is that you finance everything you buy. You're either paying interest to someone else or you're losing the interest that you could have otherwise earned.
Right.
And so that means every single day, if all you did was change the way that you financed everything you buy, starting there, that whole, like every single day, the repetitive action of financing everything the IBC way, it will naturally create that financial headwind that you need to keep more money naturally throughout the course of your life. Then you'll naturally almost guarantee yourself, if you do this, you practice this, you can keep more money, and your need to actually feel like you need to grow your money 13% every year sort of starts to, like, you don't need to have such huge returns or put more of your money at risk when you know on the opposite end, you're actually you're giving yourself the opportunity experiencing uninterrupted compound growth of your money, even though you're using your money at the same time.
Right. 100%. Totally agree. So we have that opportunity to share this with people. And it's a great opportunity. It's a big honor. I feel like it's a great honor to do that. And everyone's different and they take it in differently. And you have to learn to be slow, not go too quick about it, because when you're really excited about something, you just go, but you really can't. You got to keep it smooth, And also, I just want to point out, you made me think of how lucky we are that there's some mutual life insurance companies that have kept the faith all these years, decades, and millennia, centuries, really, that gives us that opportunity to do this, because so many of life insurance companies have gone public and they're not our friend. If I was a stockholder in them, maybe they'd be my friend, but they're not my friend. And so we're just very fortunate to have that.
Especially in the States. You guys, I have to say that there's a lot more options for privately owned life companies in the States than there are in Canada at this very moment. So,
but there are some, aren't there, in Canada, or you wouldn't be sitting here, would you?
Yeah, pretty much.
All
like
right.
a few.
So
just a few.
So that's good. And hopefully they'll continue to stay around for another 100 or so years, and we can continue doing this and have a legacy with our clients, with their children. I have some clients that are grandchildren of my original clients, who are adults now, who are doing this because we set them up early and they're ahead of the game. Can you imagine? I was in my 40s, late 40s, before I really was able to jump on this. But, there's any age bracket works.
What do you say? Right now, again, Ken, you honestly look like you're more like in your 50s than anything else, but I know that you're not in your 50s.
76, trombones. Yeah. And it's because I live like a child, just full of excitement all the time. And I'm very fortunate that I have that mindset. I really am. It's not something I had to go to a Werner Erhard or some kind of weekend retreat to pick it up. Although those things are good, there's nothing wrong with getting self-affirmations from self-affirmated people like Kelly Brogan, who's the lady that has endorsed us to a super large extent. She has a great message, mainly to women who are single or divorced, to get them on a path of sovereignty. And we're very proud to be partners with her and stuff like that. But I was just kind of born this way, I guess.
Yep, just like a wild spirit. That commercial, man, tells me so much about you.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Well, it didn't come from nowhere. I can remember in the late 60s, we had a psychedelic school bus and we bolted a brass bed on the top of the bus. And we would have a sign, drive through town and have a sign saying, if you need a rest, honk. Every now and then someone would do it and climb up on there and take a little rest in the bed for a few minutes just for laughs. And we were just doing it just to spread happiness. It's kind of that spirit of the day in those days. The other thing comes to my mind, which also has been a part of my getting to where I'm getting to, is I have always been someone who is a bit of an outlier. There are more so now because it's more accepted. But back in the day, there were extremely very few, if any, Hasidic Jewish people that were in our industry. And, I sort of felt self-conscious. I don't want to I'm not looking to look different, but that's who I am. And so I had to make a choice. Either I'm who I am or I'm not going to be who I am. And I chose to be who I am. And, most people respect it and feel fine because, when someone has certain beliefs that at least don't contradict anyone else's, I don't want to hurt anybody or whatever, people respect that. I've had nothing but a positive thing, but I can remember walking in to give a talk, say, for CE credits to accountants at a hotel with a couple hundred accountants, and you could almost see, like, who in the hell's this guy, So I used to do this thing. I put $100 on the podium and I'd say, whoever can guess what state I was born in gets the $100. They would say Brooklyn. I'm like, you guys are educated. Brooklyn's not a state, Give me a break. Israel. I said a state, one of the 50 states in the United States. I never had to give the money away because I was born in Kentucky.
Right.
So I had that on them. But again, a little levity never hurts.
Well, there's so much I want to say, like everything from it. I felt goosebumps when you were sharing with me that your dad actually believed in the Austrian economics, and he planted a seed in you just by telling you about it. And then, although he never got to see it, see you embrace that into fruition
in a practical way, right?
Yeah, while he was alive, But that's just remembering, kind of this is why I have this tattooed on my arm. I don't have hardly any tattoos. This is Genesis. And it's where a seed is planted, I put it there because it reminds me, be careful what kind of seeds that you plant into the world, because you never quite know how it's going to grow.
Right. Unintended consequences.
Right. But in some cases, it's your dad planted that seed.
Yeah.
And then you brought it to fruition in your own right. And you didn't know that, and he wouldn't have known that. Right?
No, he would have never guessed how it would be implemented, but I know he would be proud and he would be he's smiling because he would be saying, yeah, right on. His dads might do, I don't know,
I think that's amazing. It's the same thing. I feel like Nelson, in my own way, and I shared this with Nelson when he was still with us, is you're like my grandpa, because I never really had a grandpa growing up. And in so many ways, I wish he could have seen me get up on the think tank stage, a couple times to see that happen. Because
he's seeing it. Don't worry.
Yeah, because the first time I was on the think tank stage was just a year after he had passed.
Was this the first time you presented at the think tank?
2020 think tank, and now 2026.
I also have this. I feel like one of the things that people have told me, that mentors have told me, when I say, "What can I do for you? You've given me so much." And they say, "Pay it forward." And I've been able to do that with my junior partner, Josh Levy. He was a client of mine. He had just retired from the U.S. Navy as an officer. And then he said, I love this stuff. I got him reading Nelson's book and everything. And he wanted to get in. He like guys who retire from armed forces, they're looking for something to do. And he took this on, and, for a few years, it was kind of a hassle because it was more giving than getting. But he's his own person now. And it's just so rewarding to me to see that happening. He's making a good living, he's supporting his family. And I feel like if I had a small part in that, it's a very good feeling to be doing that as well. Just like I know you're experiencing with your daughter, which I love seeing. It's just good to see that.
I can't, Ken, I can't wait for you to actually be able to get access to our think tank talk with my daughter. I think.
Yes. That was my biggest regret of leaving that day. It really was.
Yeah. To my recollection, though, when we have a family or business to serve, we serve them. And I mean, albeit just to extend that, anyone who Ken and I get to, for me, I think it's an absolute honor to be able to be a part of anyone's journey, to be able to help them get set up so that they can actually practice the infinite banking concept in their life. Now, I have a question for you. Now, just based on your experience, what I'm really curious about, because this just happened to me within a 2-week period. Okay, 2 different situations. One is my first death claim.
Oh,
Believe it or not, I've been operating since 2010, and it's like 2026 now, which is 16 years.
yeah.
Believe
I
it
know.
or not, this is the first time I've actually delivered a death claim, and I spend so much time doing my best to help people live. Like use this as a tool while you were living, but then to actually be able to deliver a death claim is like a whole other, that has nothing to do with infinite banking.
It's a whole different experience. You're right.
You know,
But it is what we do.
and it is what we're able to do. And, I think sometimes as a whole, because I think just to the public eye, we're a bunch of insurance advisors,
Right.
right? And Groundhog Day, God love Bill Murphy, but man, that movie didn't do anything for the reputation of how people look at us. They look at us like the Ned Needlemeilers, like annoying, whatever, right?
Yeah. What Dave Ramsey warns against.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think that's such a huge disservice. And at the same time, it's like we're the only financial professionals that will show up with a check, a tax-free death benefit to your beneficiaries.
Yeah.
And everyone else is going to be trying to get your money, and we're trying to give you money.
Yeah.
you know? And I feel like for the most part, and I think our own industry has a little bit of work to do in the sense of also treating our profession with respect, not, like you are full-time doing this, I am full-time doing this. And most of the time, most insurance brokers are small business owners, typically. We're not huge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're not huge conglomerates. Not all of us are part of a huge conglomerate. And those of us who are not a part of a huge conglomerate, sometimes, even though we have flexibility of working different office hours, I think sometimes that's taken for granted, in how they see us. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, when I make a presentation to a client about infinite banking, and, we're talking about, we're going to focus on cash value. The death benefit is a byproduct, and we're going to minimize that to maximize the cash value and all that kind of stuff. At some point, when I get to a plateau with that, I turn it on its head and I say, I just want you to know, this is creating life insurance, and that is a gift of love to somebody. Somebody gave me that term, one of my past mentors said, that's a gift of love. Because when you deliver a death claim, you're usually delivering it to someone who's mourning, correct?
Yes. Well, I certainly was.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
never had it otherwise. I've done my share because I've been in a little longer than you. But they never say to you, I'm so angry at him, he left me money. No one says that. It actually assists in their mourning to lessen it, that someone left a gift of love, a spouse or whoever it might be, a parent. I'm upfront about it. Instead of sort of trying to act like I'm not an insurance professional, in the beginning, I do the infinite banking thing, obviously, but I end up embracing it because that way I'm not fooling around. I'm not making any apologies. And we're all prone to that because Wall Street has done a hell of a good job demonizing permanent life insurance.
Yeah, so has Dave Ramsey, so has Susie Orman, and
these popular people. Prior to 1970, at least in America, 80% of adults used whole life insurance as their primary savings mechanism. And by 1980, it was down to 15% because of Wall Street, because that's in that decade is when 401ks and IRAs and all that kind of stuff.
And universal life policies came out.
Well, that was so that the life insurance companies didn't go out of business. And then, of course, what that did is insurance agents were illustrating ULs at 18%. That just added to the problem, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. It added to the noise, and it still kind of continues on today. And so leading into also knowing that. Yeah, thank you. I find like the more that I age into and like grow year by year into my practice, so do my clients grow with they age into the process as well. And please tell me what I'm doing, like if there's something that I'm missing in my practice. But I think, as we're practicing infinite banking, we're sharing this, we also are creating and innovating ways to grow with our clients. But the noise gets louder and louder because, you've lived through different ways, like seeing how the currency has gone, like when the dollar wasn't backed by gold anymore. And then
Right.
we moved from,
Right.
we had cash, and then the digital, like credit and debit cards got even bigger. And, the banks got smarter in the way of how convenient it is to move money around the way that we are today. And then now there's been, since the subprime market in 2008, there's been the advent of like cryptocurrency, digital currency, all of those things. And then there's a lot of different noise out there. And so to keep the people that started, like, yes, I agree, I want to do IBC, I want to live my life this way. What are some, I guess, patterns that you might find that you continue to talk about with your clients that comes up for them that kind of throws them off a little bit about what they're doing? How do you get people on track?
Yeah. Because, of course, as you know, the immediate thing that comes up with most clients is, and I mentioned it earlier, is this an investment? How does it compare to Bitcoin? How does it compare to this, that, whatever it is? And I really kind of go take a side road and say, again, we're just talking about a stable place to park your money, or as what Nelson would say, a warehouse for your wealth. And then if you want to go into those things, you're more than welcome to do that. You keep in mind that once you get set up and you decide you want to take a loan from your policy, you basically, and we encourage them to call my office. You can, of course, do it directly with the insurance company, but call my office and you just say, hi, my name is Jim Smith, and I want to borrow $40,000. And we just look you up and make sure that that's doable. And we just say, I'm kind of Reader's Digest here and saying this, that'll be in your bank account in 3 business days approximately, And what's most interesting from that is the omission that we don't ask, why do you want the money? Are you still working, Mr. Smith? Do you still have a job? Do you still have income coming in? None of that comes about because the CEO of Bank America, he doesn't get asked those questions when he wants to borrow money. So why should you? But they'll say, I've got a lot of money in Bitcoin. What should I do with that? And I really kind of tell them that's not my area of expertise, which it isn't. I know it's very volatile, and we provide an alternative to volatility. We're dealing with companies that have been paying a dividend nonstop for 125 years or longer, and that's our claim to fame. And I'm going to put my hat on that and keep them focused on that, because when they get that, they see, yeah, that makes some sense. And of course, not for everybody. Some of them tell me, I'm going to just put more money in Bitcoin and, have a great day. That's all good. People
Right.
need time. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe they have CDs that, certificates of deposit that are coming due in 8 months. And they're going to call you back or something of that nature.
Yeah, 100%. I pick up what you're laying down there, Ken.
Yeah.
So here's another thought, because we are running into the 50-minute mark. Time goes by fast, but I do hope that you have a little bit more time to provide me.
It's fine. No problem.
Yeah. So what are really 2 things. One is we just talked about the noise and what can throw someone off track. And I mean, there's always a lot of things that throw people off track with IBC, especially it's like, oh, but my line of credit's like 2.3%. And then policy loan interest rate is always higher. Like that always throws people.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but one of Steve Jobs' famous sayings back in the day when we were working with him is, look, you're either going to give me signal or noise. And if you give me noise, that means I'm probably going to fire you.
Yeah.
And signal means something that actually moves the needle forward. So we were working on a project and one of the guys on the project comes up with a totally different idea. It might be a good idea, but it's noise.
Right.
And let's stay focused. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Staying focused is definitely a bit more of a challenge today, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
So many distractions.
Well, this reminds me, actually, now that we're here, Wallace Wattles, who wrote The Science of Getting Rich, he actually came up before Jim Rohn and Dale Carnegie. And, he always talked about how, truthfully, if you pick a path and you stick with that path, you're going to have more success with that path than if you're doing this, and this, and this.
True.
So kind of to the same point.
Of course, some people might say, well, Ken, then what'd you leave Apple for? I left Apple because I was averaging 80 to 100 hours a week for 12 years, and I just burned out.
Yeah.
And also, they started moving product into places like Walmart, they were selling it cheaper than what authorized dealers could even purchase it at. So it was time to go. So sometimes that happens, but generally speaking, you're 100% correct.
Yeah.
But there are times when the messages are on the wall, clear as a bell, and you have to respond or else you go down with the ship. And by the way, when I got into this business, I'm thinking, knowing what you and I know, and this is in the early 90s, where permanent life insurance was still suffering a very bad reputation, how was I going to talk to people that I knew from the computer business? And they would say, I knew if I said, do you have life insurance? And they'd say, Ken, what happened to you? You used to be such a successful person with Apple, and now you're selling life insurance? So I was too embarrassed to do that. So I just started out with strangers until I built my confidence up. It took a while, but, and when you deal with strangers, you have to deal with no, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't have the infinite banking concept, wasn't in part of my arsenal. So I didn't have that to talk about. So you spend a lot of time searching, seeking something that makes sense. And I tried a lot of different things, selling highly deductible retirement plans to business executives, things of that nature. But all of it led me to here. So here we are. And I'm glad that I have no regrets. You have to as one mentor told me, I'll never forget it. You have to kiss a lot of frogs to get a prince.
There you go. And again, you're 76 years young.
Yes, I am.
And you have a vibrant spirit. And why not just retire?
Good question. Number one, love what I do. So when you do something you love, why would you want to stop doing it?
And it doesn't even feel like work.
I don't work for a living.
Yeah.
I don't work for a living. I just educate and chat. And if you are interested, I turn it over to my guys that we make it happen. And and I'll always be there for you, whoever you are. And I love hearing about your world. I sometimes become clients of some of my clients. We had a guy who he spent the majority of his adult life, he's in his 50s, living in France, working for a cookware maker, handmade cookware out of copper. Okay. Wow. And he said, at one point he said, Yoda, I'm the grasshopper. I'd like to move back to the States and run my own business. And he does. And I surprised my wife with 4 or 5 of his pots. They're not cheap, but they're the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. They're just, that they're going to end up someday going to my grandchildren when they're of age. They're just a lifetime purchase. And I love that stuff. I love it. And I didn't do it to get his business. I did it because I loved it in and of itself.
We definitely get to serve some pretty amazing people. And I think one of the things that I'd really love to share out there, for those of us who, it almost feels this way, but it's not, I promise. This is not a whole session all about, hey, come do what we do. It's not that. What I want to share is that for those of us who are sharing the infinite banking concept, this is really for the love of helping to be a part of a solution to change the trajectory of what it means to be sovereign individuals. And it's something worth sharing. And it honestly is so very, very fulfilling that
yes,
it is not I want to share it's not the easiest thing to share, because we do get a lot of, hey, I'll just say it, for those of, there's a lot of other life insurance brokers out there who take a look at what we do, because we are sharing and we advocate to use the financial instrument, the dividend paying whole life insurance contract. And they are completely the opposite end of the spectrums. And they look at us as if we are the criminals doing bad in the world. So, there is like, we understand but I also don't agree with what they're doing either. So again, we're not all meant to agree, but it's just what resonates with you is the most important thing. And that, we share this despite all the noise and all the naysayers. So anyone sharing the infinite banking message is committed, and we're committed because we want to see a different future for families and business owners. So with that, spirituality, you chose a certain verse out of the Bible to put on your website, which is Proverbs 13:11. So regardless of whether you read the Bible or not, but it is interesting to sort of just think for a second what this has to do with money. So the verse is, can you tell me what it says? What was the Proverbs 13:11?
Oh my gosh. Hold on.
Wait, sorry. Something like about gathering money little by little as... Shoot. Sorry,
right.
I put you on the spot.
That's being on the spot. Okay, I have a quote from Nelson Nash. I have a person
Proverbs 13:11.
Clients. And I had a client who we did a wonderful infinite banking package with him. He said to me, I was on your website. Can I be a testimonial? I said, cool. Okay, dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. That is so Austrian economic. It's so Van Mises-ish. Is that a great word? To say that, because it talks about how important it is to save and to save it honestly through honest means. And isn't that what we're all about?
Well, yes. And just so I'm very clear and aware that many of our listeners are also Christians as well. And so maybe you can speak from a more biblical sense, like,
well,
what does that verse really mean?
Is part of the Jewish canon Bible, and it's part of the Christian Bible. So it's universal. I have another quote in here that I want to share with you, which my personal rabbi, I got it from a book he read. The trait of a person most needs is a lack of fear. Many people of extraordinary capabilities are held back by fear. Fear of challenging others, fear of rejection, fear of being laughed at, or appearing to be naive or foolish. Wow, words to live by, huh?
Yeah, indeed.
Don't we all deal with that on one level or another?
Every day.
Yeah, we all
Every day.
Who doesn't want to be accepted by our colleagues, our peers, our family, our friends? Of course we do, but it doesn't always work out that way. And being fearless, I think, is really, really important part of what we're trying to do and share with others, being fearless, learning to be more fearless and accepting of yourself. And there are many wonderful people out in our culture who can assist people in that. That's not particularly necessarily my role, but I do espouse it because we know that how important it is. Because, one of the things I give a presentation, say on Zoom to a new person, and it goes really well. And I will say towards the end, you're going to bring this up with family or friends or a financial advisor you may know. And a lot of them are going to give you challenges that this isn't a very good thing. And I will say, all I ask is that you give me the opportunity to respond. But you and I know that not always do they do that.
No, it's true.
It's pretty
true.
Intense. That stuff can be pretty intense. I have those voices in my own head, at least from before, not so much now. They were saying, are you crazy? You really want to do what the world is not doing?
Yeah, it's 100% truth. So I think there's so many things to definitely discuss, and we could probably go all day long, but we do have, it is a Friday actually here.
Yeah.
And so Ken, if there was one sticky note, like a sticky note truth that you'd put on every person's fridge, if you could, from keeping them from a sticky note truth, like one of these where you write it down.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got to jot that down and, stick it on the fridge so I can see it every day.
Yeah, I got a good one for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
From getting, sure, share.
Okay. I saw this with my own eyes and I've taken it on as something I always remember. I once saw one of these very charismatic self-help speakers was speaking, and a young teenage boy raised his hand and asked, could I ask you a question? And he said, the young boy said, and the boy was sort of had an attitude, okay? Sort of a challenging attitude. He didn't actually say that, but he had that vibration. he said to this guy, the speaker, who's a tremendous guy, he said, "What's the meaning of life?" And the guy walked down from the stage and went up to the young man and held his hands and looked into his eyes. And he said, "You matter." That's it in a nutshell, my friend. We all matter. We're all here to do some good. And not all of us are tapped into it, but we can tap into it. And it doesn't have to be infinite banking. It can be anything that's good. There are many channels, of course. You and I have chosen to assist people on the financial side of doing right and doing things that matter. But that's the message. And that's what I'd leave you with.
Thank you so much, Ken, for joining us today. With all that in mind, oh, the timer is up. I don't know if you heard the timer there.
Right.
Yeah. So thanks for listening with us today, leaning in with us today on this conversation.
Yes.
You know what to do. Keep in touch with us and let us know your thoughts.
You got it. You're the best, Winnie. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here with me.
So glad you leaned in with us on the Winnie podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.